Hauntings of Forgotten by Godzineshka on AO3. Chapter 2. It was obvious that a new vigilante had appeared, at least to Aizawa. Others thought it might be one of the older ones, just using a new, more effective way, but the brunette had his own opinions. And seeing how he didn't die yet in his underground career, he'd like to believe he has pretty keen senses. Still, it was strange, such an active vigilante not being seen ever once. The first few times it could be a coincidence, quirk use or stellar stealth skills. But after months of calling the police for caught criminals, there should have been something about them. Anything. But no one ever saw the new vigilante. Even the people defeated by them couldn't describe them. The most they could ever give was dark clothes, which, describes half of the underground population. Actually, half of the population in general. And Ozawa ended up giving the exact same description. He couldn't remember much of his run-in with the new vigilante. To be perfectly honest, he wasn't even fully sure it was that person. But they had dark clothes, and Eraserhead's pretty sure he had never seen them before, so he decided to go for the most obvious conclusion. But the thing is, he knows he had run into someone. He's fairly confident it was the person behind all those caught criminals, but for the life of himself, he couldn't remember anything about that situation. He called Sukeuchi immediately, yet by the time the man picked up, only 2 rings in, Aizawa couldn't say more than having had seen the vigilante. It was maddening. The second time he runs into the kid, because the boy couldn't possibly be older than 12. He suddenly remembers. Not until using his quirk, though. The first time, Eraserhead had been looking for a specific villain, and he wasn't sure whether they already escaped or were hiding around. So he looked around with his quirk activated and spotted a small figure in the alleyway that looked right back. "Who are you?" Aizawa asked, blinking, then immediately reactivating his quirk. The figure seemed to have frozen, shocked at being addressed. "A fan?" The kid answered in a sheepish tone, but really, one look at his costume was enough to tell that was a lie. "Are you a villain or a vigilante?" The boy raised his hands in surrender, backing away. Aizawa grabbed his weapon, ready to grab the kid and bring him to the police station. Walking around such a dangerous place wasn't a good idea for anyone, even less such a young teen. No one, really. "Do you really need to make it difficult, kid?" Eraserhead inquired, and then lunged forward. Surprisingly, as if expecting it, the boy jumped to the side, but with Aizawa's capture weapon, it was easy to reach and grab him, and the tail part of the kid's costume turned out to be there not only for the decoration, and latched onto a nearby lamp and brought the boy back, forcing Eraserhead to change his stance suddenly, not losing balance only thanks to years of experience. But by the time Aizawa got his footing back and turned in the right direction, the kid was already running. Eraserhead, of course, erased the kid's quirk, but even without it, the child was fast and seemed to know the alleys well. So he weaved through the alleyways, chasing after the kid, but in the end had ailed. The boy jumped from trash can to a wall. Turns out the child had climbing gloves and some decent skills to boot. By the time Aizawa got to the rooftop, the kid was gone, even after scanning the area with his quirk activated, so the man groaned and called Sukeuchi. "I saw the new vigilante. Details?" Eraserhead opened his mouth, and with a strange sense of mortification he realized that he was as useless as all those criminals they questioned. Black clothing, very good at disappearing. The line was quiet for a moment. "I see, you only got a glance. Could you tell me their approximate height, at least?" And Aizawa's poor mind was in overdrive, because he's pretty sure that he should remember more. He's pretty sure he looked into their eyes, but he just couldn't. Didn't he estimate their age? What was it? Didn't they say something? How did they sound like? No, I think they might have some kind of memory-altering quirk, he settled on. That would certainly explain a lot. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. Some notes had been made, but nothing of actual importance had been written. So the next time he noticed a criminal, and only after that a kid that took them down, by using a taser, something that the new vigilante was known for doing. Their dark hood with cat ears and a tail to boot didn't look familiar right until the moment Aizawa used his quirk. It's you again, he noted, immediately remembering their last meeting. The kid jumped, clearly not expecting to be noticed, which was strange. The alleyway they were in wasn't that deep, and even people on the streets would be able to notice him if they glanced in this direction. Being spotted was a rather logical outcome. You remember me? The kid asked, seemingly confused. Yes, Razorhead answered readily. Why didn't you find me then? Aizawa made sure to get a good look at the kid. The boy seemed to be around 5 feet tall, so he most likely wasn't older than 12. Except for the tail and cat-eared hoodie, the only specific part of their costume was a dark medical mask with a white grin full of wickedly sharp teeth, outlined by light grey. They had toxic green eyes, and Razorhead couldn't tell for sure with the dim lighting, but there seemed to be dark dots on his face. Birthmark, freckles, or an indicator of a quirk, perhaps. It probably has something to do with your memory-altering quirk. Aizawa drawled out, carefully observing the boy's body language for a sign of lying or nervousness at being found out. I would believe so, the boy agreed easily. So, it seems you remember as long as you erase my quirk, right? The kid didn't seem stupid. Why are you a vigilante? It's illegal. To be completely honest, I just couldn't help myself to help when I saw someone in trouble. And I guess now I'm in trouble for that? The child answered with a sheepish tone that reminded the man of the last time they ran into each other. If you want to help get into a hero school, Aizawa said gruffly, and suddenly the child's eyes shone with excited sparks Razorhead didn't like. At all. Oh, you just gave me a brilliant idea. I think I'll try to visit UA tomorrow. Try? The man inquired. Anyway, remember to remember me. I'm kind of really curious if your quirk gives you an innate immunity to other quirks, like mine, so if you could give me an update on how much you remembered from this conversation, it would be well appreciated. We can check after I get you to the police station, Razorhead offered oh so kindly, but even though now he knew some of the boy's little tricks, the kid still managed to escape. It seemed the child focused heavily on stealth, but even then, it was strange that whoever that vigilante was, they managed to give Aizawa a run for his money. The brunette sighed, calling Sukauchi to give him an update while his memory is still fresh. It quickly turned out not to be as fresh as he thought it was, though. When he tried to remember the vigilante rather than a human, he imagined them as a black cat, and those usually have golden eyes, right? Was it the case for them too? And they were probably small since he thought of said animal, but he can't really tell. The call was very confusing because Aizawa not only didn't have much to share, but also he completely forgot that he had already met the vigilante once before. He was sure it was his first run-in with them, while Sukauchi was adamant it was the second one. He even had notes. I think they have a memory-altering quirk, Aizawa noted, and Sukauchi made a small hum of agreement. It's the same conclusion you came to last time, too. And it wouldn't be the last time he offered this idea to the detective, nor the description of a cat, dark clothes, and once of a hoodie. At first, when Eraserhead noticed and recognized him, Zuko was terrified. He grew to depend on his quirk and his barely existing life so much that he didn't know what to do if he had been found out, remembered, and all of that normal person stuff. But in the end, it was a bit disappointing, if he had to be honest, because his quirk once again turned out to be on top. Still, it was nice to have someone who can remember everything when they use their quirk on him. Come on, even his mum needs a bit to realise who he is, and she's pretty much the only one who didn't forget their shared past. Unlike his teachers, his classmates, and Karchan. Still, his social ring is steadily growing. Now he has kind of remembering him, Eraserhead, and Sleepsy, who actually remembers Izuku like he's a normal human being. At least for now. Oh, the very thought of his online friend forgetting hurts so bad. But that just means he needs to do more research about his quirk and make sure he knows how he can keep Sleepsy's memories intact. Trying to kind of infiltrate UA was both part of tests of his capabilities and for fun. Izuku's sense of danger had disappeared a long time ago, and he kind of felt as if the law couldn't touch him. If the world was ignoring him, why shouldn't he do the same, It treats him like a ghost, so he is acting like one. Sounds sensible, doesn't it? So he walked right next to one of the students, far enough not to touch them and draw their attention though, while they were entering through the main doors. Izuku was a bit nervous. He was expecting the doors to suddenly close right before his face, or maybe for the alarm to sound. Who knows, maybe some pros would suddenly come running to arrest him. His mum wouldn't be happy, but he probably could hide in some dark corner and stay there until everyone forgets about him. But nothing bad happened. He was on UA grounds and no one was out for his blood. So he took it a step further. And another. He had spent the whole day in UA, listening to some lessons and watching the hero course train. He got confident to the point of following President Light to the teacher lounge, where he noticed, a very curious, hobo-looking man in a yellow sleeping bag. But as funny as it was, Izuku was too terrified to laugh, even in his mind. Because this is Eraserhead, one of the very few people in the world who remember, or at least can remember him. Sure, the hero shouldn't be able to notice him without using his quirk, but still. Izuku would rather not get caught kind of infiltrating UA. So Midoriya hid in the corner, and when Midnight decided to leave, he followed closely behind, careful not to stumble into her and by extent make her notice him. It would be a disaster. But surprisingly, he managed to leave UA grounds without much problem. So he returned home and grinned to himself. Well, it wouldn't hurt to join some UA lectures from time to time, would it? He was losing touch with the real world, but was he even part of it by this point? Zuko sat cross-legged on a trash can while a drug dealer spilled all of his secrets to his partner in crime. It was funny to an extent. One of them had some kind of awareness quirk and had assured the other individual that no one was listening into their conversation. Yeah, Izuku sure isn't seeing anyone here but himself and those two. So he kind of just learned all of the sensitive info and then went on with his life, entering a bar after bar, finding all sorts of places, some of them dangerous enough that even heroes would be terrified to try infiltrating. At one point he found a bazooka hidden under the counter. He low-key wanted to take it, so when he noticed a revolver laying right next to it, he didn't hesitate. He might have been starting a collection by now, since he already got 6 different handguns from various criminals that probably still thought they had their weapons somewhere in their hideout. Dagobah Beach is perfect for practicing aim, by the way. Not only do you have a lot of resources to shoot at, but also no one really cares for whatever happens down there. Or people ignore it because of his quirk, who knows. Anyway, he was going back home after a successful night outing when he noticed a familiar figure. He knew that he should ignore Razorhead since the man had the biggest chance of actually bringing him to justice, but Zuko was so curious about whether erasure gives him some passive immunity or not. "Razorhead!" he called out with a huge smile, and the man instantly turned around, grasping his capture weapon and activating his quirk. Zuko couldn't help but marvel at how the realization immediately flashed through the man's face. Nowadays, it took his mum at least 10 seconds to remember that she has a son. Not that he's angry at her or anything. He is actually quite content that she didn't completely forget, like his classmates and Karchan. "What is your quirk?" the man asked, slightly relaxing his stance. It was obvious that the hero wanted to learn more and most likely had been thinking about a way to counter this strange power of his, but Izuku didn't care that much. Honestly, lately he had been caring for less and less, like his safety, for late hours of sleep, going to all his lessons, reminding his teachers that he exists. "How much do you remember?" Izuku shot right back. "I'll actually answer your question if you answer me." It was obvious that the cogs were turning very fast in the man's mind. "I had an impression that you looked like a cat, though I thought you had yellow eyes like most of them. I forgot it was our second meeting, but the detective I talked with remembered that." Aizawa had a burning feeling that this situation wasn't as easy as just a kid with a memory manipulating quirk, running around playing a hero. He had seen plenty of children doing stupid shit, but the vast majority knew better than to risk their lives. This one, though? The boy very clearly had a very weak survival instinct to keep on walking around dark alleyways in the middle of the night, fighting bigger and far more dangerous enemies, and with a seemingly non-offensive quirk at that. "Oh, I see. He doesn't know I'm me, so he didn't forget," the kid murmured, most likely to himself, before looking up with creases on his mask telling Aizawa that the child was giving him a huge smile. "I call my quirk Forgotten. Basically, everyone forgets that I exist unless I grab their attention or they physically walk into me. The second doesn't always work, though. In crowds they just move on as if they hit a lamp or something rather than another person." It wasn't often that Aizawa was rendered speechless, but dear God, what kind of quirk is that? Most people are terrified of whatever All Might's power is, but this is far more unsettling. For everyone to forget you exist, being erased from memories of your friends, family. Aizawa isn't very social, but even he wouldn't like to one day walk up to President Mike to learn that the man had no idea who he is. "Do your parents remember?" he finally asked, his parental instincts screaming, priorities first. Make sure the kid isn't living on the streets. "Kind of. When I grab Mum's attention, she usually remembers me after a few seconds," the child said, unlike others left unspoken. "How many people remember?" "That's a very good question," the kid said, and once again his body language showed the child was smiling. He was happy, so out of the sense of this reality that he didn't even seem to realize how tragic his situation was. The Cheshire Cat aesthetic was terribly fitting, now that Aizawa thinks about it. "3, I think. Mum, you when you use your quirk, and my online friend, since I'm pretty much totally anonymous to him. That's also how the police remember me, kind of, I think. Since you have no idea who I am, you don't immediately forget about all the guys I caught." "Kid, you need help." Yes, it was a rather obvious statement, but the child really didn't have to look at him as if Aizawa suddenly started talking about predatory unicorns. "No, I'm doing perfectly fine. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm the best informant in the whole world, since no one pays me any attention, so I can listen to whatever conversation I want. And who like who, but you should know how powerful the element of surprise is in fights." Aizawa took a deep breath. He already knew this situation would be a huge headache. Being forgotten by the whole world isn't fine. The kid's happiness morphed into something calmer, resigned to a point. It isn't nice, but it isn't that bad, honestly. And I can help a lot of people this way, the boy said, his green eyes full of understanding that came from years of full loneliness, of finding the good in forced solitude he knew he couldn't escape. The sadness quickly washed away, though, overtaken by that strange optimistic streak. And, anyway, you remember, you just need to use your quirk and then we can talk as if you had never forgotten. It was strangely sad that there was no desperation in that last sentence, just pure happiness, as if it was a rare phenomenon you can live without, but are happy to see rather than human interaction. You know, the thing most people needed to function. And what if something bad happens to you? Aizawa inquired, for now trying to rationalize with the kid that seemed to live in his own world. As expected, the child tilted his head, confused. Things don't happen to me. I happen to things. And you know what? If Eraserhead had a good grip on this situation, and he was pretty sure he did, it made perfect sense. Because, admittedly, the world doesn't make bad things happen to people it forgets about. You don't shoot at the air, you don't actively try to kill a random patch of dirt, nor go off to the sky. It's all just a background, nearly as if it existed on a different plane entirely. And that's how the kid must feel. How old are you? I'll be 12 next month, the boy said proudly. Can I ask you for an autograph then? You know, as a birthday present? You can do it now, you know. And Aizawa wouldn't believe the string of things that happened next had he not been the one directly involved. It just cemented his belief that whatever quirk this boy had was far more terrifying than All Might's boorish strength. Because the kid actually took a piece of paper out and asked for an autograph. And Eraserhead managed to catch the kid. He called Tsukuuchi and he brought the kid to the police station, but you see, that's the funny part. He stopped using his quirk since he already had a good hold on the kid with his capture weapon. He just quietly walked the whole way to the station since it wasn't far and even entered it, going as far as arriving right at Tsukuuchi's doors. But on the way through the corridors, he was so focused on the thought that he had accomplished whatever he was trying to do that he completely forgot that said thing was bringing a kid with a strange yet terrifyingly powerful quirk inside. So he fixed his scarf before walking in because, for whatever reason, it was loose, and he took a seat before the realization hit him. Fuck, he whispered, and the detective sighed. They slipped away. The fact that no one in the station noticed the kid, it wasn't the worst. The part that truly unnerved Aizawa was that he had barely any recollection of how he lost the child, or even when exactly he caught them. Yeah, Aizawa agreed, massaging his forehead. His head was hurting. It was so confusing to have forgotten so many things, important things, to have them all on the tip of his tongue, but just not being able to grab them. It felt a bit as if he was in this state when you're about to fall asleep and things stop making sense. You are still awake, yet you won't really remember anything from that time because it's all so blurry. Any new details? Tsukuuchi asked hopefully. Eraserhead closed his eyes, focusing hard on shattered edges of memories that for some reason stayed buried deep in his mind. There was something sad about the vigilante. Yeah, for whatever reason, Aizawa felt sympathetic, and it could mean a lot of things. But he trusted his instinct, so he went with the answer that made the most sense to him. I think they don't have much control over their quirk. How come? Aizawa shook his head with a sigh. I don't know, just a feeling. The detective sighed, but took the flimsy piece of paper that was all he needed to note all the info they had about the unknown vigilante. There never seemed to be anything worth sharing about them. Well, it's not like we have more to work off of. Meeting the vigilante after that, using erasure and remembering, it felt like a sucker punch. And the kid, living in the world that felt like it was right next to most people's rather than theirs, just laughed. The child saw the exact moment Eraser had remembered and found it funny, while the hero himself tried to wrap his mind around the terrifying quirk. "Kid, it isn't funny," Razorhead said in a clipped tone. "It was a serious matter, after all." "It is. I mean, this time around, at least I didn't end up sleeping in a cell." "You what?" "You don't think you were the first hero to bring me to the police station, do you? The first time around I was a bit worried, not gonna lie, but the second they turn around after locking me inside, no memory of me whatsoever. So I just needed to put my hood down, take the mask off, and act like I have been subjected to some stupid prank. Then I tell them my home is close by, leave their line of sight, and it's as if they have never seen me in their life," the kid explained happily, bouncing to and from the tips of his feet like the overactive child he is. "Why do you think I'm so chill about approaching you? I'm not stupid. Ending in the police station isn't something to be proud of. You shouldn't do anything to get caught for in the first place. It isn't safe," Aizawa said, although he knew his words would go right through one ear of the kid and leave the other. Yeah, I should be at school or at home or hang out with my imaginary friends or something," the child stated, waving their hand dismissively. "Like, normal people who other people remember do." Well, at least the kid wasn't too far gone to not feel some spite at his situation. "Yes, you should. You should have realized by now that the underground is a dangerous place. Only one person with immunity to your quirk would be enough to take you down, and no one would even know to look for you." Aizawa tried to be delicate. He really did, but in the end, he wasn't a limelight hero for more than one reason, and human interaction was one of them. He wasn't able to comfort civilians for the life of him. The kid laughed and then cried so suddenly and openly that Eraserhead had half of mind to call President Mike for help. He probably shouldn't, though. It was pretty obvious that he would need to get really creative to help this kid, and even then he needs the boy to cooperate, which in turn requires a certain degree of trust. "But it's fine," the child said, fat tears rolling down his cheeks in what could only be described as waterfalls. "Because no one's gonna remember. I'm already mostly forgotten, so I can as well disappear completely, But this way at least I can do something before even I forget about myself." The boy wiped away his still incoming tears and was very obviously trying to smile. It was a terrible sight. Such a small person already flailing under the weight of a quirk that couldn't even be truly noticed, without a chance to be remembered, not even 12 years old yet and already forgotten by the pages of history. But there wasn't time for such thoughts. Aizawa needed to somehow help this kid, and the first step was preventing what would no doubt blow into a panic attack any second now. "Your online friend remembers, right?" The child suddenly froze, and this time he managed to wipe all the tears away. No new ones coming. "Yeah, he would probably notice if I went missing. But if he realized it was me, not some anonymous being, he would forget, though," the kid said quietly, as if to himself, but before Aizawa could give some kind of answer, the kid clenched his fists with a determined shine in his eyes. "I just need to make sure he never learns anything too important, then. See? There are ways around your quirk, and if you do let yourself be helped. Quirk-suppressing cuffs don't work. The safe, everyday use ones for dangerous quirks, at least. They made things worse. I haven't tried the stronger ones meant for holding villains under control." The boy noted, and, to be honest, Aizawa was already expecting it. Still, those aren't the only option. Yeah, but so far I'm the only one who got some ideas on how to work around my quirk. Mum never got any, Specialist never got any, before forgetting me, that is, and neither will you. At least for a long time. Time that I could spend on gathering info and helping people. Focus on helping yourself first. Then you can go to a hero school and help others. And this is how the somewhat mature conversation ended, because the kid chose this moment to prove just how young and stupid he still was. Sorry, I think I forgot how to hear. See you when I remember how to listen. And with that, the boy runs away, but instead of chasing him, Aizawa reached for his phone and made a note to himself to get it recorded because of the new vigilante. He knows he just talked to, and yet he has no idea how the problem child even sounded. Yeah, a recorder was definitely a good idea. As expected, the child tilted it.